needs.
Okay, we're live.
Good morning, everyone, and my name is Kieran Swale. I'm a Tourism Innovation Specialist at Southern Regional College, and delighted now to welcome you to webinar number 6 of our penultimate webinar of our summer series. Our next one then will be next week with my colleague Jimmy Moore, who will be talking to us about lean implementation for businesses and some practical ideas of how you can take lean into your business. On to today then, and I'm delighted to introduce my good friend and colleague, Brian McGee. And Brian's going to talk to you today about cybersecurity for small businesses, what you need to know. This is being recorded, and the slides will be sent out to any participants of today. As I say in every week, make sure you have a pen at the ready. Brian will be presenting this, and then Sarah will be coming in at some stage to explain what we can offer, and I may come in with a question or two. If you have questions, if you please pop them into the question and answers, and then Aisling will be able to take them. This webinar series is being supported by Connected NI from the Department of the Economy, and then the business support team at Southern Regional College. So it's great to be back with you again, and I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to hand you over to our main presenter today, Brian McGee. Brian.
Thanks, Kieran. And yeah, welcome everybody to this webinar. It's just cybersecurity for small businesses. What you need to know, as Kieran says. We're going to talk a little bit about things that you should be worried about and things that you can do about it. Just as I say, 6 things you should be worried about. They really are actually out to get you, and 7 things you can do about it. I'm going to share some tips, not many tricks, and some good practice. The question of why you need cybersecurity, locking the door just isn't enough. Used to be, not anymore. Who am I? My name is Brian McGee. I'm an innovation technology specialist with BSI, have been since 2016. I'm a certified ethical hacker, which, depending how you look at it, can sound good or bad. I did my qualification a few years ago. It's still quite valid. I've been many, many years in the public and private sector, a number of them looking after security matters and various other things, some of which I can't actually tell you about. We have a fairly packed schedule. I want to move on. So let's look at the first thing you should be worried about. This is a map that a company called FireEye produce of live web attacks that are happening through the world at the time. Now, I can't actually show you the live one, but if you want to find it out, you can look at that link, which you can see at the bottom. And if you can't read that, don't worry, this will be coming out to you afterwards. But as you can see, on Tuesday, this week, at 5 o'clock, there were 518,000 attacks happening, or had happened during the day. Now, you don't really need to be worried too much about that unless you happen to be one of the people getting attacked, and it could easily be you. So let's take a wee look at some of the other things you should be worried about and how those attacks might affect you. So this was a survey done by the UK government in this year. They've been doing it since 2016. If you look in the middle, you'll see that 46% of small businesses had some sort of an attack during the year, which, you know, that's not too bad. Everyone expects something like that. And the average cost was about $3,000 to mitigate, which is okay. It's not insignificant, but it's not huge. However, the more interesting stats are down below. You can see here 32% were attacked once per week. Now, dealing with an attack once per week actually takes up a lot of your time and can legitimately take money. Another interesting fact, though, when you consider that, is that 63% of all businesses have no policy or anything put in place to help them deal with cybersecurity. 46% are having a breach, 63% have nothing to do with it. Somebody isn't really doing their homework here. Have you got a policy? Do you need help with one? We might be able to help you out on that. You should have something, and as I'll discuss later on, it's very useful if it ever happens, and I'll explain why. But I want to look at a couple of things, hacks and hackers. So let's look at something about what sort of hacks are happening. These probably won't have affected you, but you never know. So top hacks of 2020. First of all, Black Baud. You may never have heard of these people, but they underpin quite a lot of things that we use on a daily basis, including many universities and charities. They were hacked in a ransomware attack, and they paid the ransom, which we normally tell people not to do. We don't know how much they paid, but they're a very large company, and this crippled them for many weeks and caught up a lot of other companies, which we'll talk about in a sec. Avon UK. Avon had to shut down its UK website. So anybody that uses Avon will have noticed that sometime around June, just before that, they actually had to close down for about 3 weeks. Now that's a big impact on their business. Many companies that wouldn't have been survivable. The Labour Party were caught up in the Black Baud attack, and notoriously they are very secretive about their donors, as are the Conservatives. And yet a lot of that information was extracted and no one knows what's going to happen to it. You might have heard of this one. Apparently, if you are interested, Bill Gates and Elon Musk were encouraging people to actually put their Bitcoins into this one particular place where it would be doubled. Now, we know that Bill Gates and Elon Musk aren't going to do that, and yet 398 people fell for it, and they lost £109,000 in Bitcoins, and probably quite a lot more. Strangely enough, on the back of that, there was another Bitcoin scam, which curiously, since Bitcoin is supposed to be anonymous, how come there's 250,000 people's details stored somewhere in a Bitcoin repository? So that was interesting. Quite a lot of it in the UK. And last but certainly not least, COVID-19. You'll see there APT29. APT29 are believed to be a Russian-backed hacking group, and they're Cozy Bear. And they appear to have been hacking lots of research institutes to get information about COVID-19 vaccines. Interestingly, or maybe not, who knows, could be coincidence, Russia are the first ones to announce that they've got an effective vaccine and have started distributing it well in advance of anyone else. I'm not saying anything here. So let's look at who does this and why. First of all, rogue hackers. We call rogue hackers just people that sit in the background, people that you would typically see with a hoodie and cramped over a computer, living in a basement and just hacking, and just for the crack and for the fun, and because they can say, oh, I hacked this. They don't do much damage except accidentally, but they can be a nuisance. Cyber warriors are military hackers. Now, military hackers and a couple of the others I'll mention, we can tell where they are because they work mostly 9 to 5 and tend not to work at the weekend. Activists are people who have got an agenda. They want to deface a website. They've got something to push, their Greenpeace or whatever. They tend not to go after the money, but they can deface your site and they can be a bit of a nuisance. Corporate spying has happened since day one, back in Roman times. Corporate spies, again, mostly 9 to 5, usually not at the weekend. They don't go after the money, although it's not unheard of. They'll tend to try and bring down your site or steal information. Everybody ends up being spied on. Advanced persistent threat is essentially state-level hacking. And if you spot one of these on your system, just turn it off. Spammers and adware, we've seen everybody's been offered assistance with their little problem. Everybody gets things saying, oh, you need to pay your TV license, etc., etc. These are very prevalent and a real pain, and a lot of money ends up spent there. But who's number one? Well, cyber criminals. There's actually quite a lot of money, as I'm going to talk about in a bit, to be made by hacking systems. So criminal gangs and families have been involved in this since more or less day one. They're very well funded, they're very well resourced, and they've got very clever people. And they will take you down if they want to. So it's very difficult to mitigate. And yet, the most common cause is somebody you wouldn't even expect. Usually not the most expensive, but definitely the most interesting. Your own staff. How can that be? According to a survey, human error and general not knowing what to do is to blame for 88% of all data breaches in the UK. Now, we've seen quite a lot of reports of buckets being left open and improperly configured systems, etc., etc.
Brian, could I just pause there? That's,
of course.
I'm just, so you're saying nearly 90% of, I suppose, what could be termed accidental hacking, nearly 90% is human error.
It absolutely is. Every single day, you're going to see another thing about another bucket on AWS that's been improperly configured. You'll see another thing that says these people didn't update their sites. I'm going to actually mention one later where a company that could easily have avoided all sorts of difficulties didn't do the right thing, ended up being fined big time, and it cost them a big effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, so while people will deliberately go after you, most of the time it's purely by accident.
Okay.
So I wanted to actually just to talk about something that you can help with this, or actually help you to find out if this has happened. A guy called Troy Hunt. So this is about accounts and passwords. This guy runs a website called Have I Been Pawned? Pawned is sort of hacker speak for having been compromised or having your credentials stolen, and you're now owned by the people that do this. A lot of the vast majority of what he collects, 493 major websites with over 10 billion accounts, given that the world population is only 7.8 billion, that seems a bit excessive. The vast majority is actually not done through genuine hacks. It's done through human error, as we've said. But you can find out if you're on any of these lists and what the extent of the damage is. So I did this with my own name, one of several accounts. I'll not go through how bad some of the others were, but you can see that I turned up in 4 places. Now, Apollo and this one here, which is online or spam bot, are background systems. I've never connected to either of these deliberately, but they're systems that underpin other systems, and they were, in this case, while the Apollo one was funny, it was hacked, but the online or spam bot, which is actually a system that sends out spam, you'd think would be better protected, accidentally just dumped all their data. But I was on both of them. House is a website that got hacked about last year, and quite a lot of their data was lifted, but fortunately no passwords, etc. And I'll explain in a bit why that's important. Zynga, on the other hand, you may never have heard of, but if you've ever played Words with Friends or any of those other subscription type games, admittedly without money, they take quite a lot of details, and their entire database was lifted in its complete, everything, passwords, the lot, and just dumped online. So why is that a problem? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a sec, but definitely, I think you'll agree it's a problem. Now, Sarah, could you come in there? Did you try this?
I did. I reluctantly put my email address into Have I Been Pawned, and came up with 6. So yeah, very similar results to you. The Zynga one, Spambot, House. There's a Mr. Excel, and then an Adobe one.
And interestingly, the Adobe one was last year before last, I think, and actually again it was a pretty severe hack. It took them offline for a while and caused them quite a lot of difficulty. I don't seem to have appeared on there, which I was kind of surprised about. So maybe I used a different account.
Graham, what can you do if, so Sarah's been hacked 6 times and she knows the sites, but is there anything that she can do or you can do or I could do if this was me? What can you do?
Well, absolutely. And the very first thing you can do is if you see any of these and you know, as I'm going to mention, that you reused your password, immediately go and change it.
Okay.
On all your sites, which is a big deal.
Okay.
That's pretty much all you can do. Now, some of the sites, whenever this has happened, they've offered a sort of insurance, a protection for in case you do find that there's an issue later on. But for the most part, that hasn't been the case. Certainly the Apollo and Online or Spambot, they're not going to offer anything like that. And there's very little you can do there. But I will say this, what he has provided on the site is a lot more information than you can see here about what exactly was taken. So you can judge your level of risk from the information that he gives. It's an extremely useful website.
That's very good.
So I want to move on and talk about something you can do about this. Not quite that, but something that'll help mitigate some of the risks. Talking about passwords and protection. So, list of 6 things to do with passwords. First one, use them. Use them everywhere. Password protect everything. Number of times that I've said to, admittedly, my wife, why have you no password or PIN on your phone? Oh, it's just too uncomfortable. It's irritating and it doesn't do fingerprints. Well, I think we need to change that. Password protect your mobile. If you've got a mobile for work, or even if you're using your mobile through work and you lose that, as I'm going to mention later on, you could lose the lot. So, especially your mobile, definitely a tablet. So many people don't bother with a tablet. Laptop, desktop, Fitbit, if it's possible, whatever. If you have the chance to use it, use two-factor authentications. Now that's the source of chip and pin type idea. It's swipe card and code for people that are buzzing into an office. It's where that notion where you get that thing that says, your account has just been accessed here. Are you sure that you want to allow this? Or the one that says, you've just made a purchase of 500 quid. Did you really do it? If not, click here, or put in your code in order to approve it. That's two-factor authentication. If you have the chance to use that, please use it. It is, I will grant you, very irritating whenever you try to log in somewhere and it says you have to put in something in your text message, but at the same time, it'll save your life. Going one step beyond, and a lot of phones will do this, you can use your fingerprint or iris scan. Face ID, I'm a bit less comfortable with, but iris scan, definitely. Don't see it too much for websites and for desktop computers, but it used to be a big thing on laptops and still is, I think, on quite a lot. It's definitely now coming in on almost all phones. If you have that option, make use of it. If you're going to use a password, though, make it complex but memorable. Now, it doesn't have to be particularly complex. There's a concept of using 3 random words. So anything more than 12 characters with 3 random words, as long as you remember what they are, then that actually will make it really difficult to hack. But the thing is, as it says next, don't reuse them between sites. See my previous page. There's a reason why we tell you this. Now, the only difficulty that you're going to find is that you've got dozens of these. Don't write them down. Well, we used to tell everybody not to write them down. But there are situations where you have to write them down. And I actually now recommend that if you do have a lot of passwords, I mean, I don't actually know how many passwords I have to make use of. But if you do have to have a lot of passwords and they are mission critical, so the password for your router or the password for your main server or something, do write it down, but put it somewhere very safe under lock and key. And tell people where it is. That should be part of your emergency procedures anyway. And again, if you need help with that, we can talk to you about it. Last but not least, password managers. There's a bunch of them out there. Quite a lot of them are free. Please make use of them. Now, it was pointed out to me, but Firefox lets you do this, and you can save your passwords on your computer through your browser or whatever. I don't recommend that. Apart from anything else, unless you've actually paid for the version that lets you pass those around, you have to be at that computer in order to use them. Whereas LastPass is online.
Brian, what about Apple? Apple lets you do that.
It does, and it's the same problem.
Right. Okay.
Unless you're actually physically at that particular computer, you can't really do anything with it. Now, I believe, although I never actually checked this, that Apple also do store those online and you can access them from elsewhere. But that means going through the Apple site in order to get them. And I'm going to talk about accounts in a moment, and I'll explain another bit about why I don't think that's such a good idea.
Okay.
So, passwords. The strap line under this was long and strong. Make them long, make them strong. If you have to use them, please use them wherever you can. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually computer accounts. And this is logging onto your computer. So this is something you can make good use of, and it's a good thing to do, and it will mitigate a lot of problems, including the one I'm going to talk about next. The first thing is, don't log in as the admin onto your PC. If you're in as the admin and you are compromised in any way, you lose the lot. The admin has complete control. Now, I will admit, most of the time these days, it's not that easy to prevent problems like that, even if you're not logged in as the admin, because there are lots of ways of getting past that. But why make it easy? So don't log in as the admin. Yes, you will get asked 20 times a day, please put in your admin account because you want to do something. Fair enough. Get used to it. Limited user accounts are better for daily use. Don't have a guest account. As I discovered to my cost when my son realized there's a guest account on my tablet and was logging on and playing away merrily, guest accounts are a bad thing. Get rid of them. If your computer's domain connected, your administrator should be doing this anyway. There shouldn't be guest accounts, etc. If you have that option, make use of that. If you don't, and you have the option to use a local account, use a local account rather than your Apple ID or your Windows account. Now, Windows doesn't like that, and Mac and Apple doesn't either, but the reason is this. If you log in with your Windows account or your Apple account onto your PC, the password for that account is now the same password you use to log into your online email or your Office 365 or OneDrive or any of the other things that are involved in logging in online. So that could easily be looked over or caught up somewhere else when you're not at home. So therefore, that opens up all of your system if that account is compromised. So I don't recommend using it as your login account on your PC. Other people will tell you different, and I wouldn't necessarily argue, but I would definitely not agree. Something that doing the last two things, having a good password and taking care of your accounts, will help you with is something we're going to look at next, and that is ransomware. Things you should definitely be worried about. If you've never seen this screen on the left, be thankful, because what that is CryptoLocker. Now, CryptoLocker is a fairly old piece of ransomware, but it's still knocking about. And what happens is you click on the wrong thing, you go to the wrong place, this pops up, locks up your computer, encrypts all of your contents, and asks you for money. And while these days you might be able to get it back, it still puts a serious dent in your day. As some of these people discovered now, TransLink, etc., weren't hit by CryptoLocker, but they were hit by something called Revel, which has a different long name that I can't pronounce, starting with S, slob something. Still can't pronounce it. But TransLink, we don't know how much difficulty it caused them, but they were offline for a few weeks at the beginning of the year. TravelX, anybody who was traveling at Christmas time or just after will have discovered that they couldn't get money, and TravelX were closed for about 3 weeks. Cost them a bunch of money. All of this peels into insignificance. Redcar was interesting. Peels into insignificance with ISS. ISS is the big facilities management company in Holland, and they reckon they paid the ransom, but they reckon that between paying the ransom, which cost them many millions, and mitigating the computer issues and getting all of their computers back together, they might get it finished by the end of this year, and it will have cost them about $100 million plus. Now, the vast majority of companies, that would just sink. So the one thing you genuinely do not want is ransomware. If you've ever been hit by ransomware, you'll know how painful it is. But there are some things you can do about it, including what I just talked about, but there are some specific things. So let's have a look at that. First of all, practice safe browsing. What are we talking about? Don't click on things that you don't think you should click on. Only click on things that you know well. Don't go to sites that you think may not be safe for work. But even then, and quite often, this is becoming more sophisticated. These things will be coming in through emails, which we'll talk about in a minute, and various other ways. It's vigilance. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. You have to look at everything and be skeptical of it. Ransomware is out there, and it's very virulent, and particularly at the minute, there's some pretty nasty versions of it going around. So it's, you're almost frightened to go on the net. One thing you can have is a very good backup. Now, everybody out there should be doing a nice backup your backup, backup your backup's backup, and recycle and moving around and doing all of that. Good backups, keeping them off site, the whole works. And again, if you want to talk about that or need help with any of it, we can probably help you out. The only way to make sure that you can get back after a ransomware attack is to have a good backup, and to make sure that that backup is checked for ransomware and other things before you go anywhere near restoring it. But please take a backup, test or restore. There are rumors that people have written the ransomware in such a way that it will actually infect your backups and then wait 3 months so it always gets cycled. I started those rumors. Apparently, no one's taken it up yet, but that's how I would have written it. So I'm very wary. You can get insurance for this. You can get cybercrime insurance and ransomware insurance, and it's worth looking into if you think that there's any possibility that it might be a problem. 2 or 3 of the companies that I mentioned before, they had insurance, and so some of their costs were defrayed, but nevertheless, it's not just about the money. There's time, there's redundancies, there's all sorts of things. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a scare and a bit of a thing. I'm going to give you another scare now. So things you should be worried about. Email scams, corporate and personal phishing. We call phishing essentially, it's called phishing because you're phishing with a long pole and you're asking people for things that they're not supposed to give you. And we to PH just because. Essentially, these are email scams. We get them 10 times a day. If you're in business and you get an email from a client that says, I need to change my account details, or a supplier that says, can you please pay the details into this place instead? It might be completely legitimate. It might just be a scam. Some of these scams are very well worked out. People will spend time thinking about your company, looking into who the people are, and just making sure that they know everything about you before they'll send one. And some of them are easy enough to spot. For example, this is clearly not a Rackspace email address. That is not how you spell consumer, and nor would they come that way. But let me tell you, the vast majority of these scams do not come this obvious. Also, if you're looking at this on a phone, you wouldn't see this. Yeah. You only see the bit that says Rackspace. So I've had emails regularly enticing me to do things that I shouldn't, regularly enticing me to do things that I should do, but coming from people that are not who they say to be. Especially a very, very credible TV licensing one that went around just last year, and I think is still doing the rounds. You can't be too careful. What can you do about it though? Be alert. We used to say Britain needs alerts. If an email seems rushed, or if it's rushing you, or if it's coming, especially if it's signed by the CEO and they're out of the country, if they're not literally standing beside you, then I would be inclined to check it and make sure that it really came from that person. And that can be difficult, but be persistent. If you've got staff, train them to do the same. And when they do check things with you, just say that's okay. Anything with any kind of value to it, you need a second approver. That can be complicated, and I've talked to a lot of people about this in the past, and I've been to a few events where even when there was a second approver, they were both out. And the people that were doing the scam knew this. They were just watching the company. It was a big company. So if you get targeted specifically, it can be very difficult to mitigate. When you're checking the details of, to find out if it really came from the person that says it is, don't use the phone number that's in the email. That'll just be them. Look on your own accounts, look them up in the phone book, if such a thing exists anymore. Make sure you find out their details. And if it looks too good to be true, like, put their Bitcoin into this place and it'll double up. It probably is.
Right. Could I come in there on point number 2? I think your tips here are really good, and actually I'm unsettled in this presentation about my own personal security, which is obviously, the probably message is how real the threat is. Train staff to be alert. I'm thinking for the small businesses or the businesses listening to us today, there is something that you can do on a regular basis, because I found today, like, more than a refresher, actually really educational, and I'm blowing my cheeks out going, oh wow, I really need to get back and get onto this, So I'm thinking surely then, if not certainly once a month, at least once a quarter, you know, you should be taking, if you have a company of 10 plus, or it doesn't matter how many's really in your company, you should be taking them through, not like spot checks, but just reminders, refreshers, or here's the latest, because what you've shown us to date is this change is so quick, and the threats are ongoing. So to train the staff is something, I guess, that I know personally I probably need a lot more training on.
I think for very small companies, typically, although this does happen, and I was with a company actually not that long ago where, while I was there, they actually got one of these emails, and someone was just about to press, yeah, let's do that, and I was like, hold on, that doesn't look right. And it's funny, I wasn't actually there for that reason, but I just happened to be, and it was handy. But you're quite right. For very small companies, they tend to go, oh no, we know everybody, we know all our suppliers and everything. Yes, you do, but so do the scammers. So you're right. It is. Sarah reminded me that just last year we did a little exercise in the college and sent out an email to say, you know, who would actually accept this at face value, and quite a surprisingly large number of people did. Thankfully, I didn't, and I felt smug. But it would have been very poor practice if I just gone, yeah, okay, yes, of course. It is worth every now and again. You're right. Just, you know, throwing a little scam in the works, just to say, has everybody got this? And just putting something out. If it's small enough, take an afternoon, take an hour, and say, okay, this has happened. Let's just talk about how we can mitigate against this sort of stuff happening. Yeah. You're quite right. We can help with that if any companies are out there interested in looking at that sort of training. It's certainly within the remit of maybe skills focus. I'm going to talk about a course that we have coming up later on, and I'm not sure if that explicitly will be in it, but it might well be.
Okay.
I'm just going to go on to something else that you can do to help yourself, again, to mitigate against some of these other things, especially ransomware. The message hopefully will be very clear. So as it says at the beginning, so we're talking about encryption here and security of your devices, etc. First thing, lock your phone in big letters, because as I said earlier on, with a phone, there's so much information on a phone, connectivity, and so many other ways into your data from a phone, that if you haven't locked the phone and someone has it, then you have lost the lot. I'm not going to say what's on my phone because some of us are supposed to be there, but my phone is double locked, so I'm happy with that. If all of you iPhone users, by the way, can feel fairly smug because it's pretty severe, pretty secure, and even FBI are having difficulty with that one. But then again, the people that they are trying to crack are people who know what they're doing and have a vested interest in making sure it is well locked. But the security.
What does the double lock mean? What is that?
So this is it asks for both a fingerprint fingerprint and code.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. One of the things for some of the phones have a thing called Face ID, or face unlocking, and originally you could just have shown it a picture and it would work. They changed that now, so not only does it have to be a face, but it has to be your face, and you have to be alive. Now the only difficulty with that really is that someone grabs your phone and shows it to your head, and then but then you can actually lock it secondly, so you still also have to put in a code. It's not common to do, and it does require an extra. There's a thing there we mentioned. No, we don't mention it there later, called Knox. It does require some extra software, but it's worth doing for a company phone. For your personal phone, you assume the risk. Another thing then, again, helps with ransomware and helps with other things I'm going to mention, but whole disk encryption. So I mentioned there the ICO. ICO are the Information Commissioner's Office. They are the people who look after GDPR and will prosecute you if you don't do it, but they also do much more than that, and they are the people that you have to actually talk to if you lose a significant amount of data. The first question they'll ask, was it encrypted? And if it wasn't, you get very little sympathy. Also, your insurer will ask the same question. And again, if you haven't implemented it, you get very little sympathy. So what is it? Effectively, the whole disk encrypts the entire disk from start to finish. So when you turn on the computer, Encryption starts at that point. If someone pops out the hard drive or takes the hard drive out of your computer or steals your computer entirely, they won't be able to read anything on it. One system that I used to manage, actually the disk wouldn't even appear when you plugged it into another computer. It was an interesting device. So 2 ways of doing that at the minute. There's many ways actually, but built in or baked into Windows is a thing called BitLocker, and you'll see the icon there. If you see that icon beside your C drive, please click it. Now, point to note, in Windows, it's only available in the Pro versions, which is a bit sneaky of Microsoft, but it's the way they're doing it. You can implement others, and there's lots of free-ish and paid-for versions of whole disk encryption systems. BitLocker is by far the best on Windows. On the Apple system, you have FileVault, and as far as I remember, FileVault is available in all versions, at least all more recent versions. And again, when you implement FileVault, you better remember your password though, because you can't recover it. Same with BitLocker, although for complex reasons, BitLocker, and again, one of the reasons I don't recommend using your Windows password is it's tied into your actual Windows account. So you theoretically can recover the password, but then so could other people. Protecting Office documents, if you've got any documents that are of any value, and that should be all of them, put a password on them. Now, the passwords used to be a joke in Office, but now you use strong encryption and it's very difficult to actually do anything. So put a password on it, especially if you're sending it to someone else. Well, then again, how do they get the password? You send it in a different way, either a text message or in a phone call just. But that's a classic issue. Password protecting your documents is a good idea. Windows doesn't really let you password protect folders and individual files in that way, but documents you can. So the last thing there I've got is VPN. So what is it? A VPN is a virtual private network. VPNs allow you to effectively create an encrypted tunnel between your computer and where you're trying to get to. Very useful in a lot of situations, especially if you're not in the office. All you people like myself, although today I'm actually in an office, that's only because I don't have anything that you might call broadband at home. If you're connecting back to your home office or you're connecting from your home to your office, then a VPN allows you to establish an encrypted tunnel between your computer and that router in your office.
Brian, could I come in on the VPN?
Certainly.
So let's say you're a company, you've got, let's start with, I suppose, some of our companies that we work with are self-employed, okay?
Yep.
So it's one person company. Do they need a VPN?
It depends what they're doing. Essentially, a VPN is useful in other circumstances, but if you're working from home and all of your work is at home, then no. But if you're working from home, as some of the companies that I worked with were working from home, but they were remoting onto computers in their office so they could continue to use them, then yes, the short answer is yes. And they were using remote control software across a VPN. VPN sounds like oh no, how would I do this? It's mostly built into any professional router. Essentially, you turn it on, you get a code, and you're there.
Yeah,
there's not that much more to it.
Because certainly I know when I've been having some issues that you referred to there, and then it says VPN, and I was kind of scratching my head until I had assistance from someone who has expertise like yours. And then I begin to realize, oh, right, so that's where you put that in, So obviously, a lot of the routers nowadays, with many people home working, I guess then this is very relevant.
Absolutely, and the number of companies that I've spoken to that aren't using VPNs, and I'm like, why? It's not that hard to do. I will grant you, it's not trivial. It's not just click done VPN. There's a few steps you have to take, but it's definitely worth looking at. It's just so open, and anybody that's dealing with anything sensitive, anything to do with children, anything like that, it's definitely open to abuse. Okay. The remote desktop idea sort of mitigates the VPN need because you don't actually transfer data across the network, but you are transferring images. And unless they're encrypted, same issues. You can still be intercepted if somebody's interested. And there's lots of issues with that. The other place that you use it is if you're traveling. So I'm going to mention a thing called Wi-Fi spoofing later on, but a classic that I will admit I have done for the laugh is to sit in an airport lounge and set up your computer as a Wi-Fi host and give it the name of the airport lounge's Wi-Fi router and just see how many people try to connect to it. And a lot of people will. And if they do, you just scam all their information and on you go. So this happens much more frequently than you might think, and people are out there doing this. It's a fire and forget kind of thing. You just leave it and then every now and again come back and see what you gathered up. The VPN will protect you from that because essentially all the traffic goes through the VPN. It's all encrypted. No one can actually break that unless they're at the end where you are connecting. There's a third use of VPN, and that's to watch Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that in other countries without letting people know. But I can't advocate that because it's not technically legal. Okay. I want to talk about another thing that you need to do, and it's doing things right and doing the right thing. It's a kind of a double-edged sword, but let's get into it. So, software. All of us use software all day, every day. And some of it is expensive. If you have a copy of SolidWorks or AutoCAD or any of those bigger pieces of software or something specialized or any of the Adobe suite, some of that stuff can actually run to thousands of pounds. And not everybody needs it all the time, and they would rather not pay all of that. So there's lots of places you can go to get it that wouldn't be entirely legitimate. Also, a lot of people use software without really paying attention to the licensing terms because, well, those licenses are expensive and they're a bit hard to understand. The problem is licensing, less of an issue for what I'm talking about, but these guys, Federation Against Software Theft, they're very keen on that and will in fact sue you. But the problem is with software that is downloaded that you don't know where it's coming from is quite often it will have a few extra bits with it that you weren't expecting. And they'll include ways to access your network, ways to download other viruses, etc., etc., etc. Just, suck it up and buy the software from a legitimate retailer. You may never have a problem, but when you do, it'll be big. So if you don't want to buy specific software, find something compatible which isn't infected. The other thing is, the other thing about the software is make sure you keep it up to date. I'll mention that again in a minute. So the other thing then is GDPR. Everybody will have heard of GDPR by now, and what you'll see there is that we have fines and there's no process. But GDPR was a really big shakeup in the regime for protection of the individual's rights. While it then also intercepted lots of people and made them have to think about what they were doing, I think that was not a bad thing quite a lot of the time. And it also made a lot of people shake up their processes. We mainly look at it and go, oh, GDPR again. But actually, it's very, very useful. It's worth knowing about it. You probably will have to anyway. And it's also worth following because it makes things very much clearer. In saying that, a lot of people don't see it that way. However, if you fall foul of the GDPR, then that's when the Information Commissioner's Office will come and talk to you. I just want to bring them in now. I've said these are the good guys. They are people who look after us, the individual. That's their main purpose, is to make sure that individuals' rights are protected. But they also help. They'll talk to you about backup regimes. They'll talk to you about what to do if you get compromised. They'll help you out. It's a very willing kind of company. However, they're also willing to sue you. So as you can see, they can sue you as an individual. That person, Nicola Young, she was a town clerk in Whitchurch Town Council. She intentionally deleted a recording of a town meeting when someone asked for it. Now, whether she was asked to or not, I don't know, it didn't say, but at the same time, they still took her for $2,000. You don't want that to happen. A few other people going about their job, rain trading, illegally making calls using the telephone protection service. They just lifted the list, went, oh, these people don't want to be called, let's call them. They are still trading, interestingly. Decision Technologies thought they were doing the right thing. They had brought people in. They had lots of companies working for them, all claiming they're doing the right thing. Clearly weren't. They did send 16 million emails, which is quite a lot. Fine 90K. Up to Cathay Pacific, $500,000 because they didn't do good security. There was you can look this up and it's interesting reading if you're boring like me. There's a series of steps they should have taken and they didn't take any of them, including simple things that I've just mentioned, like keeping the software up to date and patching their servers. $500,000. The only reason it was $500,000 because the ICO have capped their fine limit to 500,000. Otherwise, it would have been a lot more. But as you can see down here, in 2020, and only in 2020, and up to June, 51 million euro in fines have been levied in the EU. And that didn't include the UK, curiously. So probably another million or so. So people are doing it wrong and being caught. So it's better to do it right, because otherwise it could cost you money and a lot more. I've got a couple of slides left. I just want to go over very quickly a few things that are as well as what I've talked about and I find interesting because I like things that are interesting and possibly bad. So things you should be worried about, they're on the left, and things you can do about it, they come after. First one, bad USB. Now I encourage you to do a couple of things. One, go to Have I Been Pawned and put in your name. Two, look this up on the internet because it is funny. People have packed a small USB stick with capacitors, charged it up, and then watched it blow up the computer. The mitigation for that, don't plug in USB sticks that you're not familiar with, that aren't yours, that aren't bought from a shop. Now, when I do this as a course, I then hand out USB sticks to see how many people plug them in. Almost everyone does, but there's usually one who goes, are we sure about this? I said, no, it's okay, I've tested it and I'll show them that. Secondly, USB hacking. So USB sticks, your keyboards, etc., they bypass security. And they can be hacked to actually do lots of stuff in the background that you're not even aware of, including installing all the software, downloading things, acting as a keylogger, and just generally messing with your day. So don't plug it in if you don't know where it's been. Computer theft happens. Theft and loss. I think last year, the MOD lost about 40 laptops. The various other ministries lose laptops every single day in taxis and weird places. Laptops and phones just go missing. And quite often they are not fully protected. Your only protection here is whole disk encryption. Passwords, etc., will not help you because they can be broken. Encrypt the entire disk with good, strong encryption and make sure that that is implemented and on all things. Whole disk encryption, by the way, will apply to pen drives as well and external drives and everything else. You can encrypt a lot, and it's definitely worth doing if you have anything at all on there that's even vaguely sensitive. Same with your mobile phone. Please, please, please lock it. Please, please, please make use of biometrics if you have them. If you are using it with anything at all that you think might be sensitive to you. And remember, Apple Pay, etc., is all on there and quite often doesn't ask for information. If you can unlock the phone, you can get access to these things. So, your account can get drained. It's amazing the amount of information that can be returned from a phone. So, lock it. There are services you can get, Find My Phone, etc., which will actually delete your phone remotely. Wi-Fi spoofing, I've mentioned this, essentially setting up as a fake Wi-Fi point and cramming in data. It's really good, it's fun. VPN. Bluejacking is an interesting one because a few of the shopping centers for a while were running promotions where if you turned on your Bluetooth on your phone, they'd send information to your phone for special offers. It's just madness. I'm sorry. And no disrespect to some of the people I know who do this for their living. No. I know what Bluetooth things connect to my phone, and that is it. Bluetooth is just too open to abuse. Newer versions, the newest version is pretty secure, but older versions are just no, definitely not. Okay, worried you enough? Good. Where can you get some advice? Let's talk about that. So cats on the internet, of course. There's a website that the government, UK government, have called CyberAware, and this very unfriendly looking cat will basically admonish you to do the right thing and do it properly. And it is good. There's also a certification you get called Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. Cyber Essentials is essentially just a checklist that says, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? It's very worth having a look at. There are companies out there that there's a complex network of companies that will actually help you get through it. Cyber Essentials Plus, people will come and physically examine your things and make sure you've done them right and help you to develop the documentation necessary. It's not free. If you want to do business with certain government departments, you need one or both of those certifications in order to do that business because they need you to connect online, and you must have at least Cyber Essentials and often Cyber Essentials Plus. But Cyber Essentials is worth having, and it's not too onerous to get. And last but not least, we have a course coming up, which is going to run in different places and maybe online, depending on where things are happening at the time. The first one starts in September in Armagh, and it'll talk about physical and virtual risks to security of information, strategies to prevent this occurring, and help you to actually physically do various things, which is good. So, my last thing. If anybody remembers Hill Street Blues, let's be safe out there. Protect your password and by extension your account. Make sure that you've got a password or a PIN or a password and a PIN, biometrics, whatever it is, but protect that information because that is your only real way of making sure that you don't get stung. And even then, I will admit it's not foolproof. Protect your phone. It's your life these days. So take good care of it. Thousands and thousands of phones are lost every day. And it's amazing just how much grief it can cause. Get smart with email. If it comes in and it doesn't look right, even if it looks mostly right, just take a third look at it. Keep your software up to date. There's new security hacks, new issues with software every single day. Microsoft famously have Patch Tuesday, and they will literally send out a lot of new patches every week to make things better and also to fix things that are broken. So please keep them up to date. And please get someone to look at your systems. Do a regular assessment, as Kieran mentioned earlier, regularly refresh training and make sure people understand that if things go wrong in the company because of something that has not been done, it's not just the company that suffers. Okay, that's me. I'm going to hand you over to Sarah, unless any final thoughts, Kieran or Sarah?
Yeah, if I could just jump in before we do have Q&A, so perhaps Sarah,
okay,
Sarah, could we take the Q&A and then hand over to you? Would that be okay?
That's a great idea. Yep.
Yeah. So just to summarize, Brian, listen, thanks a million. Really enjoyed that. We were just quiet. You did definitely, you did scare us in many respects, and yet you informed us. There were fantastic takeaways for business, and your last slide is really useful there, honestly. I'm thinking about, I like the way you talked about the cyber essentials at the end. Is that something that you can do, that you can help with, or the SRC can help businesses with? You mentioned about a cost to the Cyber Essentials Plus, but the Cyber Essentials, is that something that SRC can help with?
We can to a point. It's not, we're not one of the companies accredited to deliver it,
Okay.
but we can help companies to prepare for it. the way the accreditation system works is for Cyber Essentials, it's not so onerous because essentially it is just a checklist and you submit it online with a nominal cost. I can't remember what it is. The plus though is a bit more sophisticated, and you have to have an accredited company come and do that survey for you. But we can help to prepare companies for that.
Okay, Brian Ashley has posted a few questions here, if you're okay to take them. First one from Gwen. Can you get your email address out of pawn sites?
No, the short answer. The sites that haven't been pawned, though the information there has actually been posted on open websites. So it's out in the internet. There's nothing you can do about that. But what you can do is you can withdraw your account from any of those companies that have an account. Unfortunately, even then, the problem of trying to remove information that already exists is huge. GDPR struggles with this because of the right to forget, and it's just really not possible.
Okay, Jean, question from Jean. Can you give an example of a local account, please? How is it different from a domain account? Example question mark.
So a domain account requires you to be connected to a domain, and so therefore with you'd have to be physically connected to the network or in an office, whatever. A local account operates only within the computer itself. So it wouldn't let you go to another computer and log in. So those are the main differences between a domain and a local account. When you're having your computer at home, just your own laptop, your own desktop or whatever at home, you'll mostly log in either with your Windows account, which is the one that you use to access like OneDrive or whatever, or a local computer account on that computer only. And again, it only accesses that computer, not anything else. That's the main differences.
Aisling has posted, for those that maybe aren't aware, Aisling has posted a link to the register for the course that you were referring to. And Gwen has an interesting question. Can you comment on both Ireland's COVID tracker and Northern Ireland's HSC Stop COVID NI app in relation to your comment about Bluetooth security?
I haven't actually looked at either of these, to be honest, but I do, in fact, I understand what the issue is. Neither of them will try to make a Bluetooth connection. What they do is they use the Bluetooth system to see if there is another Bluetooth device around. So they're not actually going to try and connect. Effectively, what the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi systems will do. So let's say you go into an airport or you go into a shopping center or whatever, and you turn on your Wi-Fi. You'll see a list of all the different Wi-Fi sites that are available. If you turn on your Bluetooth, you'll see all the Bluetooth devices that are around you. That's how it works. It doesn't then try to connect to them or try to extract information from them. In saying that, even then I would be wary with Bluetooth, because Bluetooth is in the past was much less secure, and you could make silent connections and you wouldn't know it. These days it's less of an issue, and I think now, and if you've got Bluetooth 3 or 4, especially Bluetooth 4, it will come up and say there's something is trying to connect to you. Is that okay? And it will ask you for a code, etc. Whether that has been actually broken or bypassed, I don't know. Okay. And so I personally am a little wary of it, but for the purposes of the COVID thing, I'm prepared to put up with it at this point.
All right. Brian, listen, once again, really fascinating insight there, very educational and actually fantastic practical advice for businesses as well. At this stage now, thanks today, Brian. That was a really, really good session. I'm going to hand back to Sarah now.
Thanks. Bye.
Sarah, we can't hear you. You need to unmute your mic if you would, please.
Sorry. Brian, thank you very much for that presentation. It was great, if more than slightly worrying. I think everybody's going to be having a wee think about how they work online and how they're protecting their devices.
My job is done.
I just wanted to jump in here and quickly talk about the support that SRC have available for businesses. So firstly, with the Skills Focus programme, that's for training programme, and it's funded by the Department of Economy to provide non-mandatory training, and has recently been extended from 75% funded to fully funded in response to COVID-19. Now, the course referenced by Brian earlier, the cybersecurity course, would fall under that. So please get in contact if that was something you're interested in. So the Innovate Us programme offers 30 to 60 hours of mentoring or upskilling on a one-to-one basis through virtual, on-site or college premises for an innovative product, process or service. We offer innovation vouchers. They're a great way for businesses to offer to avail of R&D opportunities and resources for innovative solutions for business issues. Although with this programme, it's important to remember the VAT element. There's a similar product offered by Enterprise Ireland. The innovation voucher is offered by Invest NI. For fusion programs, they're a great way for businesses to get high caliber graduates into your business, partially funded through Intertrade Ireland with mentor support provided by the college. There's a KTP, which is for the north of Ireland, which is a similar scheme offered by Innovate UK. So as you can see, we have lots of different ways of getting support for businesses. So please get in contact if you have if you want to hear any more about the specific requirements for your business. You can contact us at betterbusiness@src.ac.uk and we can talk through your requirements. We've got one further webinar in this series, and that'll be next Friday. It is on lean implementation, and it will be hosted by Jimmy Moore. So you see us here on register for that through our social media channels, and we'll be back here next Friday at the same time, 9:30. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And thank you again, Brian, Kieran, Ashlyn, for this, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.